Hey everybody, so welcome to the next painting video. Today I'm going to be painting the Black-Eyed Kids while telling stories about the Black-Eyed Kids. So, this reference image is one that I made with AI. So the painting isn't going to be exactly the same, but that way I have an idea of what I'm doing. This one took me a really long time. And it is going to be sped up because it took me a couple of days, I don't know how many hours to finish this thing. It was really difficult to get the kids right. But anyway, I will be telling supposed true stories about the Black-Eyed Kids. So, this is edited very little, so I'm kind of just reading. It's going to be more natural that way. I like doing videos like that. It's easier and just, I don't know, it sounds nice to not have everything edited. If I make a huge mistake, it's going to get edited out. The Black-Eyed Kids are one of my favorite, I guess, legends. Some people think they're real, think it's real. They claim to have seen them. I don't know if they're real, but I mean, I kind of want to see them, but at the same time I don't, because of the bad things that happen to people when they see them and the bad feelings that they get. So, in case you don't know who the Black-Eyed Kids are, they're a pretty new legend. They gained popularity. They gained popularity pretty recently. I'll tell the story about when the story really took off. But what they are, in case you don't know, is they are children that are usually between the ages of 6 and 16, who have pale skin, unusual clothing, and most disturbingly, solid black eyes. They're completely black, there's no whites, no nothing, just black voids. They usually give off a sinister, bad feeling. People that see them get very extreme feelings of dread. So when the Black-Eyed Kids stories really became popular, it was started in the 1990s. And this happened to the first popular story, I should say, happened to Brian Bethel in Texas, Abilene, Texas, in 1996. So, he experienced two young boys approaching his car while he was riding out a bill. I think he was in a small little strip mall area in the car, writing out a check. So while he was in the car, these two young boys approached and asked for a ride to the movie theater. There was a movie playing, I think it was Mortal Kombat, and the movie had already started and it was at least halfway done. So Brian thought that was weird. He told them, the movie's over. He had weird feelings from them. And then he noticed that their eyes were completely black. And he took off, drove away. And then his story spread rapidly online. And then a bunch of people started coming out with stories where they say that they claimed to have seen the Black-Eyed Kids as well. Now, he was a journalist, so a lot of people think he made it up. He still says that this is real. He claims this really happened. I don't know whether he made it up or not, but if he didn't, if this really happened, it is terrifying. These things are terrifying. Now, nobody knows what they really are. They usually appear in pairs. Sometimes there's just one, but a lot of stories there's two, an older one and a younger one. Could be 2 girls, 2 boys, a boy and girl. It's all different. And they usually show up at your door in strange clothing. And they usually have their heads down and they ask to come in and use the phone a lot of times. People get this really bad feeling of dread and then notice their eyes being completely black. Sometimes men in black show up to pick them up, which is interesting. And I will read the story at the end. Sounds like men in black show up. That's a good one. That's a good story. Oh, even though the Black-Eyed Kids is a more recent thing, there are stories that sound like the Black-Eyed Kids that happened a while ago. So I have a story from 1919 that this grandfather told. And so they might have been around a while. Whatever these things are. Oh, also, some people speculate on what they could be. They could be aliens, they could be demons, they could be... Let's see. They act kind of like vampires because they ask to come in, which is very vampire-like. So, the story from 1919. So, this lady Jamie, her grandfather told this story that happened to him in early 1919 near Sandoval, Illinois. So he says that summer had been scorching and the heat hung around for months. So to cool off, he had all the windows and doors open and he was sitting on the porch reading because it was too stuffy inside. When he got up to make a snack and grab a drink, he heard a knock. This was odd because people who knew him usually just called out. So he figured it might be somebody looking for food or work. As people like this came, since his house was near the tracks, the train tracks, they would sometimes come by and ask him for work. So when he went to the door, 2 kids were standing there. And they asked, "May we come in to rest? It's a long way home." He told them that they could sit on the porch and that it was too hot inside. He asked if they had come from the tracks, but all they would say was, "We need to come in, may we?" These kids made him feel uneasy. They wouldn't look at him directly, and they were too clean. Riding the trains was dirty business. And you'd get covered in grease, coal dust, and sometimes even get cuts. So Jamie's grandfather knew this, especially because he had lost his leg in a train accident, which kept him out of the war. So, besides these kids being spotless, they were... which kept him out of the war. But these kids were spotless, like they were headed to Sunday school. They weren't even sweating. And their hair was neat. Like if they had been walking through fields in the heat, they should have looked messy and tired. So he asked again if they wanted to sit on the porch, but the girl, there was a boy and a girl. The boy didn't speak. The girl just repeated, "May we come in?" She kept saying it. "May we? May we? May we come in?" Over and over until Jamie's grandfather slammed his hand down and shouted, "Damn you both, no!" The girl fell silent, and then both kids just stood there, quiet, until the girl looked up at him. Her eyes were black as coal, and she said one more time, "Mister, may we please come in?" Jamie's grandfather didn't know what to do. He walked to the kitchen and sat down, feeling like somebody had punched him in the gut. He sat there until his dog came rushing into the house, shaking like a leaf. In the end, he never told anyone, except eventually Jamie. He said he still blamed the encounter on heat exhaustion, but you know, it makes you wonder how far these stories go back. That's a pretty old one. That's a good one. So it doesn't say. I guess after he went into the kitchen, they must have gone away. Still pretty creepy. Especially her repeating herself over and over again. Very weird. So these next stories are more recent. The next one is about a black-eyed man at a store. So I decided to read some black-eyed adult stories too, not just black-eyed kids. Apparently there are black-eyed adults. I've even heard of white-eyed adults and kids, but we're not going to talk about that today. But apparently it happens. So, some black-eyed adult stories too. So, this woman, Joanne, was working her shift in retail, and she found herself checking out this charming old couple at the register. So they were talking about normal customer-worker banter, and she's all smiles until suddenly it hits her like a ton of bricks. She locks eyes with the husband for the first time, and what she sees sends chills down her spine. His eyes are jet black. The store falls into an eerie silence, as if the air itself is holding its breath. She said no one spoke, and she's overcome with an intense sense of dread. It's not fear exactly, she says, but more like she's been pulled into some kind of trance by the darkness of his gaze. She wants to look away, to check her surroundings and figure out why everything went quiet, but she's unable to tear her gaze from those pitch-black eyes. It's like she's been transported into another dimension, gripped by some unseen force. So she said as quickly as it started, the moment passes, and the old man and his wife leave without a word, and she's left just standing there, shaken to her core. Handing him his receipt, she can barely catch her breath. She's so rattled that she has to take her break early, feeling on the verge of tears. So when she gets home, she dives into research trying to figure out what happened. That's when she stumbles upon stories of black-eyed children. But what puzzles her is that the man looked like he was in his late 60s or early 70s. So she's talking about him wearing black contact lenses. So there are black contacts that cover your entire eye and will make you look like a black-eyed kid or black-eyed adult. I think they're called sclera lenses. And I mean, it's possible he had these on, but it's pretty unlikely that a 60 or 70-year-old would go to the grocery store wearing black contact lenses. I guess it's possible, but it would be weird. Also, the feeling of dread that she had and the silence in the store can't be explained. So she, it points to something beyond her understanding. She says she knows what she saw, and she's desperate for someone to believe her. And she can't really explain the encounter, but it fits the black-eyed kids, except it was an adult. Also, he was in a store, though, so he was not trying to come in her house or anything. So a little different. Still weird. The store going quiet, that's something that happens during a lot of these paranormal events, is everything just goes completely silent. It's very weird. So the next story, black-eyed kids are seen in a parking garage. This happened in 2005 when this family took a visit to a theme park in Florida. So this lady, Dana, and her mother are going to a theme park. So as they make their way through the parking garage that night, the atmosphere was desolate. There was no one else around. Her and her mother decided to rest on a bench, as suddenly 2 children approached from behind, walking in perfect sync, with alarming proximity. It was well past midnight, far too late for children to be out alone. She said initially assuming the children needed assistance, her mother, a seasoned school teacher, expected them to gravitate towards her. However, the children remained silent. Their demeanor was oddly jovial as they maintained an uncomfortably close distance. So, despite attempts to encourage them to move on, the children seemed unfazed, continuing their conversation with infectious laughter. She said, as they progressed towards the parking garage, the children tailed closely behind, refusing to pass despite ample opportunity. So, sensing a chilling discomfort to impending doom, they're unable to bring themselves to turn their backs on the kids and just continued watching them. She said the children appeared like mirrored reflections of each other. They were both boys, and they wore nondescript clothing with matching sneakers, looking to be about 6 and 8. They both had short light blonde hair and stained blue mouths, maybe from some kind of candy. Their features were obscured until Dana noticed their completely black, solid black eyes. And she said their laughter was airy and high-pitched. After reaching a walkway, the smaller child unexpectedly began to dance, exhibiting a level of grace and maturity beyond his years. His movements, coupled with his eerie smile and stained tongue, sent shivers down Dana's spine. Meanwhile, the taller child observed with a sense of approval. His demeanor was eerily adult-like as he moved himself closer to Dana's mother. Feeling a wave of nausea and dread, Dana and her mother made a hasty retreat to their car, their minds reeling with questions and disbelief. Even after the children disappeared from sight, they could hear their laughter lingering in the air, leaving a mark on Dana and her mother. So that's a creepy one. Black-eyed kids in the parking garage. Very creepy.
Hi, I'm Pommy! Do you want to experience the joy of a carefree pup? Coloring can bring you that happiness. Grab this delightful coloring book, Animals and Sugar Skulls. It's cute and fun. Don't hesitate, get yours today.
So the next story, black-eyed kids, black-eyed man at a campsite. So in the early fall of 2011, Jay and his cousin experienced a perplexing encounter while camping in Michigan. So they had been close since childhood and avid outdoor enthusiasts. They embarked on a camping trip to a forest near Mackinac City using Jay's father's pop-up camper. Their days were spent hiking and enjoying each other's company before their return to college. On the first night, they relaxed with beers and conversation before retiring early. So the following morning, they set out to explore the area. After hearing distant yelling, they cautiously proceeded, only to find no one in sight. Using a GPS, they navigated their way back to camp, where they heard strange rustling noises in the distance, figuring it was probably local wildlife. The odd noises persisted into the night. They sounded like they were coming from the same direction. The next morning, they investigated the area, but found no explanation for the disturbances, only signs of disturbance in the ground. During breakfast, their tranquility was shattered when Jay's cousin spotted a tall man in a black tracksuit at the edge of their camp. Approaching cautiously, Jay engaged the man in conversation, only to notice his unnaturally black eyes and dirty attire. Sensing their unease, the man cryptically remarked about meeting them again before disappearing into the woods. Alarmed, Jay and his cousin quickly packed up and relocated to another campsite, where they could enjoy the remainder of their trip without the unsettling presence of the mysterious man. The memory of the encounter lingered, leaving them to speculate about the strange man with black eyes. So this one just could be a guy messing with them with black contacts. I mean, it could have been something else, but it sounds like it could be somebody messing with them, in my opinion. But who knows? Next story is black-eyed kids in Pennsylvania. So a woman going by Kay talks about a disturbing encounter with what she thinks to be the black-eyed kids in Pennsylvania. The incident occurred in the winter of 2013 while Kay and her husband were taking a walk at a state park. Despite the park being typically deserted in winter, they encountered 4 children walking towards them along a trail near rental cabins. The children, 2 boys and 2 girls, of varying ages, appeared unaccompanied and wore light jackets. However, what caught Kay's attention were their unusually dark eyes, especially those of the older boy. When the children approached, the older boy inquired if they lived there, to which Kay's husband responded that it was a rental cabin. The lack of reaction unsettled them. Things took a sinister turn when one of the girls, despite her young age, nonchalantly lit a cigarette. When questioned by Kay's husband, her response was met with a chilling glare, and her eyes appeared to get even darker, causing Kay to feel an immediate sense of dread. Without a word, the children turned and walked away, leaving Kay and her husband shaken. Later, while at a post office to mail packages, Kay spotted the same children in the post office parking lot, reigniting her fear and anxiety. Despite her doctor's prescriptions, Kay continued to suffer from severe episodes of panic and anxiety. So it sounds like, after this encounter, it gave Kay anxiety, which is a very common thing for people that see these black-eyed kids or black-eyed adults. Sometimes worse things happen, especially if they're let in to the house. So that's an interesting one. That could also be kids messing around, but I don't know that she would be left with such anxiety from something like that. It would be creepy to suddenly see somebody with black eyes, but these people say that the fear is very extreme. And I don't know if you'd get that just from seeing somebody with the black contacts. I have seen people wear them and it's creepy, but there's no extreme fear or anything. So the next story is about black-eyed kids at a gas station. In November 2012, while working the night shift at a remote gas station in northeast Louisiana, Michael encountered a chilling phenomenon that still haunts him to this day. As the lone attendant in the dimly lit station, Michael relished the quiet moments shared with the occasional traveler. Then, one fateful night around 3 a.m., while he was completing his routine tasks, the lights suddenly went out, plunging the station into darkness. Guided by the dim glow of his cell phone, he was able to make his way to activate the gas generator, illuminating only essential areas. Alone in the eerie silence, he listened to the radio, the only source of companionship amidst the howling winds. His sense of isolation was shattered when he noticed figures approaching in the darkness. Outside, peering through the window, he could see 3 children on bikes. 2 of the children approached the door. They fixated their gaze on Michael. So Michael expected them to enter and greeted them, but his unease grew when he observed their strange demeanor. One of the children requested to use a phone. Michael offered his cell, only to be met with a disturbing revelation. Their eyes were entirely black, devoid of any discernible features. Startled, Michael recoiled, refusing their demand for a real phone. Sensing danger, Michael swiftly secured the door, refusing to let the children in. Their departure left him shaken, prompting him to review the security footage, only to discover that the cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned during the encounter. Despite his efforts, the identity of the children remained elusive, leaving Michael haunted by the chilling memory of that night. So I guess they asked for a phone and the cell phone wasn't enough. They wanted a real phone. Interesting that the camera stopped working right when that happened. There's not a lot of stories that mention a camera. So it's convenient that the camera stopped working. I wonder if they shut it off so couldn't see them. This last story is what happens when you let them in. Now, if you might have heard this one, if you've read any or heard any Black Eyed Kids stories, but it's very disturbing. So, this woman, we're gonna call Mary, and her husband lived just outside of a small, close-knit town in Vermont. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and people didn't bother locking the doors at night, as there was never any need to. But about a year ago, during a heavy snowstorm, something happened that shattered their sense of safety. So I don't know when the story came out. So a year ago, I don't know when that was. It was late, around 2 a.m., when Mary was awoken by a loud banging on the front door. She and her husband lived on a dirt road just off the main route in town. The snowstorm had made the nearby hills treacherous, and Mary thought that perhaps somebody had an accident or needed help. It wouldn't have been the first time. When she looked out the window, she saw that their motion-activated spotlight was on. There were footsteps in the snow leading from the road to their driveway, but no car in sight. The snow-covered road hadn't been disturbed for hours. She could see someone was standing at the front door, but at the angle of the window obscured her view. So feeling uneasy, Mary woke her husband to tell him what was happening. As she explained, the banging on the door started again, so her husband went to answer it, while she stayed in the hallway. When her husband opened the door, 2 children stood in the snow, looking down at the ground. There was a boy and a girl, no older than 8. They were dressed strangely, with odd haircuts. The girl's hair was long and straight, while the boy's looked like an old-fashioned bowl cut. Despite the freezing weather, they wore no coats. Mary's first thought was that they might be Mennonite children, but as far as she knew, there wasn't a Mennonite community nearby. Looking back, Mary knew that their usual reaction would have been to rush the children inside, warming them up with blankets and hot chocolate. But something about these kids was deeply unsettling. They wouldn't make eye contact, and when her husband asked if they were okay, they simply asked if they could come in. Her husband glanced at Mary, unsure of what to do, and Mary asked the children where their parents were. "They'll be here soon," the children said in a strange sing-song voice. Mary reasoned that there must have been an accident, and despite their instincts screaming at her to not let them in, she let them inside. While her husband took them into the living room, Mary went to the kitchen to make hot cocoa. As she worked, she could hear her husband asking the kids questions. Where they came from, how far they walked, if their parents' car had broken down. But all they would say was, "Our parents will be here soon." Mary started to notice something odd about their cats. Usually the cats were curious and friendly, but tonight they were all hiding, except for Pigeon, who was in the kitchen with her. Pigeon's fur was standing on end, and his tail was puffed up as he stared into the living room. When Mary tried to comfort him, he hissed and backed away until he was hidden under the kitchen island. She had never seen him act like that before. Returning to the living room, Mary found the children sitting eerily still on the couch, while her husband sat with his head in his hands, complaining of sudden dizziness. She handed the kids their cocoa, and then they looked up at her. Mary felt her heart stop. Their eyes were completely black, no whites, just solid black. The children seemed to sense her fear and asked if they could use the bathroom. Trying to stay calm, Mary showed them the way down the hall. Once they were out of sight, she hurried back to her husband and asked if he had seen their eyes. He had, and he said that they looked like his brother's badly bruised eyes after a car accident. They were discussing what to do when her husband's nose suddenly began to bleed. He'd never had nosebleeds before, and Mary was certain it was connected to the kids in the bathroom. As she rushed to get tissues, the power went out. Her husband called her name from the living room, and as Mary walked back through the dark hallway, she stopped dead in her tracks. The two children were standing at the end of the hallway, motionless, staring at her in the dark. Mary had never been so scared in her life. After what felt like an eternity, the boy said, "Our parents are here." And the children walked to the door, opened it, and stepped outside, leaving the door wide open. Mary's husband struggled to stay upright, but quickly shut the door behind them. Through the window, they saw two tall men, at least 6 feet tall, standing by a black car idling at the end of their driveway. The men wore black suits and just stared at them before getting into the car and driving away. The power returned about half an hour later, but nothing was the same after that night. Over the following months, 3 of their cats went missing, and Pigeon was found in a pool of blood, having suffered a hemorrhage. Mary's husband began experiencing regular nosebleeds and was eventually diagnosed with an aggressive form of skin cancer. Despite rarely being in the sun, Mary herself started having dizzy spells and nosebleeds, along with other health issues that she couldn't explain. Mary was convinced that all of this was connected to the night they let the black-eyed kids into their home. They told everyone they could about the strange children, but no one else had seen them. And some even laughed at their fear of what they called the Mennonite kids. But Mary knew what she had seen, and she wished her husband had never opened the door. Mary wanted to share her story as a warning to others. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, lock your doors, call the police, and wait until morning. Don't make the same mistake she did. So that's disturbing, that they became very ill after letting the kids in. I couldn't find it, but there was another story that I had heard years ago about this mom that went to the store with her son, and had left him in the car for a few minutes while she ran in. And when she came back, she got in the driver's seat and looked behind or looked in the rear view mirror, and there was a black-eyed kid sitting next to her son. Now, I don't remember. I think her and her son got sick, but I don't remember exactly what happened. But these stories where they're let in, people get sick. If these stories are true. Which I don't know if they are, but if they are, they're terrifying. And I wonder what these things are. If they're real, what could they be? And what would the point of making people sick be? Because they come in, they sit there, and then they leave. So are they taking something from people? Are they taking your energy, which is causing you to then get sick and get cancer? Are they for some reason giving you cancer on purpose? I don't know what the point of that would be. Or are they just there to study people and the sickness is just a side effect that they don't really mean to happen, it just happens? Maybe they give off something that makes people sick. I wonder if it depends on how long they're around you. Since if her story is real, the kids were there for a while. And the husband was the closest to them because he was sitting in the living room with them. So maybe that's why he became the most sick. It's very interesting. So like I said, this painting took a really long time, days and days. But I'll show at the end how it came out. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed these stories. Like I said, the black-eyed kids are one of my favorites. They're so creepy. I'll leave in the comments if you've ever seen anything, or if you know of anyone who's ever seen anything like this. Because we would love to hear that. Hopefully nobody became ill. It sounds like if you don't let them in, you're pretty safe. You're just terrified. So thank you for watching, and this is how the painting turned out. These paintings that I'm doing will be in our calendar for next year. So that's pretty cool. So if you buy a calendar, we'll have, I don't know which month, I forget which month Black Eyed Kids is, but it's a creepy one. So this will be in the calendar, and along with the other ones. And thank you for watching, and there will be another video soon. So I'll see you then.